I'm great. How you doing, Charlie?
Okay. We call to order the Port Hueneme City Council regular meeting, Public Financing Authority meetings here on Monday, June 18th, 2018 to order. We start out with a closed session at 6 p.m. And Madam City Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig.
Here.
Councilmember Hensley.
Here.
Councilmember Sharkey.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Here.
Mayor Schnarr.
Here. We move on to item number CS2, public comment, and we'll set aside 10 minutes here for comments made by the public on matters not on the agenda. So seeing no one in the audience, we'll move on then to item CS3, conference with labor negotiators. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know, it always catches me by surprise. Paying attention. Thank you. The City Council will adjourn to closed session to discuss one matter, which is a labor negotiation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The agency designated representatives are Linda Catherine Lee, Deputy City Manager, Finance Director Ken McDonald, and Stephen M. Berliner, Special Counsel. The employee organizations are the SEIU 721, Southern California Public Service Workers.
Very good. So with that, then we will recess into closed session and reconvene here at 6:30.
Enjoy.
Hey, Bob. And these are open forum too? Third. How are you? How are you? Yeah. Summer's busy. Good. Okay. Hurry up, Jim. Calling the Port Hueneme City Council meeting to order. We've just come back out of recess from a closed session. We'll go with the flag salute, followed by the inspiration by Council Member Jonathan Sharkey. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just came back from being on the East Coast back in Boston, and when I lived there I never did tourist things, but I was there with my stepson who came up from Texas on his vacation, and we did all the touristy sort of things. And one of the things we did was the John F. Kennedy Library and Museum. And there is a big plaque on the wall with a quote from the introduction to Profiles in Courage. Profiles in Courage was, of course, the book that he wrote about people in Congress that took brave stances. It's not a very thick book, you may notice. And this was, of course, inspired by one of my heroes, Edmund Burke. And this is what is engraved on the wall at the JFK Library. The true democracy, living and growing and inspiring, puts its faith in the people. Faith that the people will not simply elect those who will represent their views ably and faithfully, but also elect those who will exercise their conscientious judgment. Faith that the people will not condemn those whose devotion to principle leads them to unpopular courses, but will reward courage, respect honor, and ultimately recognize right. May it be so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Here.
Councilmember Hensley?
Here.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Berg?
Here.
Mayor Schnapp?
Here. We move on to item number 4, the agenda. Is there a move to approve?
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So motion carries. Agenda is approved. We go on to item number 5, reportable actions from closed session. Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. There was a reportable action from tonight's closed session. Although I'm not permitted to discuss the terms of the approval because it's a negotiation, the council did take a vote, and the vote was made to approve the staff recommendation, and the vote was made on a motion by Councilmember Fig, seconded by Councilmember Sharkey, and approved on a 4-1 vote. The ayes were Mayor Schnapp, Mayor Pro Tem Berg, Council Members Fig and Sharkey. The nay was Councilmember Hensley.
All right, thank you so much. So at this point, the City Council will recess to conduct the business of the Public Financing Authority, and then upon conclusion of that, reconvene then into City Council. So we have the Public Financing Authority regular meeting. Could we have the roll call, please?
Director Fig?
Here.
Director Hensley?
Here.
Director Sharkey?
Present.
Vice Chair Berg?
Here.
Chair Schnapp?
Here, we have the agenda before us on item FA2.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. So we carry on the agenda. We have then consent agenda, FA3, and approval of minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right. And then for Public Financing Authority, we have open forum. Anyone wishing to speak to the board on matters not on the agenda may do so at this time. Seeing none, then are there any board comments? We go on to FA5 item. Are there comments?
No.
No? All right. With that, then we will end the Financing Authority regular meeting. We only hold this once a year, just to let you know. That's why it's kind of an odd meeting. And usually at the beginning of the summer. All right. So now we reconvene to the City Council regular meeting, and we'll go on with item 6, which is open forum. We reserve up to 30 minutes to hear public comments on matters not on the agenda. Every speaker will have 3 minutes. And with that, I have 4 speaker sheets. We will start with Becky Bruning, followed by Bernadette McDowell.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. Tonight, I am here on behalf of the Port Hueneme Historical Museum, and I only have a couple announcements for them. The first one is on June 23rd at 11 a.m. They will have a guest speaker, Dr. S. Jim Campos, who will be talking about the California citrus fruit box labels. And starting in July, they are going to do lighthouse tours. Anyone interested in doing the lighthouse tours will have to sign up at the museum. They have 3 scheduled right now, one for July 21st, one for October 20th, and one for January 19th. Anyone signing up for this will be shuttled from the museum to the lighthouse. So if there's any handicapped people, then they're not going to have to walk that path. So, that's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
I just want to mention that the lighthouse tours would be spectacular. Is there still the model downstairs that focuses in on what the lighthouse used to look like back at the turn of the century?
I believe so.
Okay, so that's even one of the special highlights of that.
Yeah, and I'd also like to announce that Larry Downing is now the president of Friends of the Bard Mansion. So.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Bernadette McDowell, then followed by Tracy Sisson-Phillips.
Good evening, Mayor Schnapp and City Council members. I'm Bernadette McDowell, City Librarian at the Ray Pruder Library, 510 Park Avenue, Port Hueneme. I'm here tonight to talk about Summer Reading 2018, which runs through August 4th. This year's theme is Reading Takes You Everywhere. We invite children, teens, and adults to journey with us to exciting places discovered through books, fun and educational activities, and special events. Children, teens, and adults can sign up online at the Ventura County Library website at vencolibrary.org or at the library. Children and teens will log the number of minutes they read on their individual online account. For every 100 minutes they read and up to 1,000 minutes, they are entered into our end of summer grand prize drawing for an ACES Chromebook and Maker Lab book. At 500 minutes, they get to choose a book to keep. Adults submit the title of each book they've read. Drawings for prizes are done throughout the summer. We really do hope adults join us too. Our summer reading kickoff event will take place next Monday, June 25th at 3 o'clock, and feature a not-to-be-missed performance by Nifty Balloons. Nifty Balloons is one of my favorite shows. Other special summer events include musician Craig Newton, the Reptile Family, the Kealoha Dancers, and magician Sean McMaster. All will take place on Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Most of these events are sponsored by the Friends of the Port Hueneme Library. This summer, the Pruder Library will present a coding class open to students entering the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade this coming fall. The class will meet Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1:30 to 3:30 over a 5-week period. Students will learn to animate, modify, and design their own games using Scratch programming language. Space is limited to 12 students and registration is required. But that's not all. Game days are scheduled on Tuesday afternoons from 2 to 4. Participants will be able to play a variety of games, both plugged and unplugged. STEAM Maker Days are planned on Wednesday afternoons from 2 to 4. Participants will explore and discover concepts of science, technology, engineering, art, and math in fun and sometimes silly ways. Crafternoons on Thursday are at 2 o'clock, and this is where participants can express their creativity through fun arts and crafts. For more information, the Pruder Library's event calendar is available online at vencolibrary.org. The library is currently recruiting teen volunteers ages 13 to 17 to assist us by staffing the summer reading desk, helping with event setup, cleanup, preparing crafts, and other tasks. This is a great way for high school and middle school students to earn community service hours through the summer. If they're interested and can work 14 hours through the summer, please stop by the library for an application. Mandatory orientation will take place this Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And the library is a great place to explore, discover, and connect. We invite everyone to visit us. Are there any questions?
Were there any questions? All right, thank you, Bernadette. We have Tracy Season Phillips, followed by Tom King.
Good evening, City Council. Tracy Sisson Phillips with the Hueneme Chamber of Commerce. Mayor Schnapp, esteemed council members, what's new at the Chamber? Well, tomorrow is our monthly State of the City address. No, excuse me, let me try that again. Monthly Wake Up Hueneme networking breakfast, where we will host the State of the City address. My apologies, I just got back from a week in Boston for business, and it's kind of like this. On July 10th will be our next Hueneme Beach Sunset Supper. Again, my thanks to everybody that's been involved in help promoting and supporting this event at the beach. I was out of town, but I heard rave reviews from my staff person and other comments from the trucks that it just keeps getting bigger and better. On July 21st, a quick little plug for the Relay for Life of Hueneme, Oxnard, and Camarillo. I do believe city council members were sent save the dates and invitations to come and take part of the opening ceremony festivities, this being the inaugural event for this Tri-City Relay for Life. We are very much wanting to have representation from all 3 city councils as well as our other elected officials' offices. Looking farther on down the road, save the date for November 29th when we will host our 6th annual holiday tree lighting event here, hopefully on the front lawn of City Hall. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And then we conclude with Tom King.
Madam Mayor, City Council members, staff, Tom King, Port Hueneme. I'm here representing Save the Port Hueneme Coast. Okay, we're getting this today. That's all right. Stand up. Come on. I did hand out a piece of paper. It's got my phone number on it. It's there for a reason, which I'll explain in a minute. So there's a few things that we'd like to say, just a few. We want to thank our members and the people of Port Hueneme for their opposition to the location of the 2 12-story building project at the end of Surfside and the beginning of the Lighthouse Walkway. Their efforts helped make a no towers a reality. Our group and the people we meet at the walkway believe that this area should only be a park open to everyone, not a developer's private beach for the chosen few. Our group plans to stay very much engaged in what is happening here in Port Hueneme and the coast. Every single one of us, all of us, is accountable in some way for what happens in our community. We will therefore continue to monitor the City Council agenda and attend meetings where necessary. We have offered to work with the city to find agreeable solutions to generating revenue and cutting costs where possible. We are under no illusion that we have the answers or any acceptable solutions that are easy, but we do want to help. We would propose a meeting with Mr. Butler and members of our group who feel that they have some ideas to contribute. Our group's mission hasn't changed. It's here to help protect the fragile Port Hueneme coast from the Ormond Beach wetlands to the Port Hueneme Lighthouse. By helping the city, we believe will help the mission. So we do offer that. You have my phone number.
Okay, thank you. And are there any others that want to speak on any matters not on the agenda? We do come back to the open forum at the end of the meeting as well, so you have that time.
Isn't there another one?
No, that's for an item.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us on board.
Just check. I don't read them.
Okay, so we move forward then to item number 7, consent agenda, and that's the approval of items 7A and through 7E.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? So the change up here on this agenda is that if there are any public comments for items that are consent agenda, we actually take them during the consent agenda. And not seeing anybody that wants to speak on that. And we will then, if there are any ordinances that must be read by title only, then the city attorney will actually read them during that time as well. But seeing that we don't have any for the consent agenda items, we then move forward. We are here then on item 8A, and we have a series of public hearings. We have 8A with adopt a resolution granting special use permit for the American Cancer Society Relay for Life 5K. So I will then verify that there was a notice by the city clerk posted. Okay, she says yes. Council members declare any conflict. Are there any conflicts anyone wants to declare? Council members declare any ex parte contacts. And saying none then, right? Okay. I will then open up the public hearing, and we'll have a staff presentation followed by public testimony. Yes, Councilmember Fig.
Yes, I did have an ex parte communication. It was with the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, who had concerns regarding waiver of fees for parking and other associated costs in order to host a nonprofit event like this. So I have nothing to add to the conversation other than to say that I received that concern.
I see. Okay. Okay, so with that, then we have a presentation by Mr. Tony Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. Waiting for my little clicker here to work. Okay, well, I may have to have you, we'll try this on the next one as well and see if it works, but anyway. Okay, again, good evening. This is a request by Happy Trees on behalf of the American Cancer Society for what could be an annual event. This is a 5K walk-run proposed to be held on June 30th from 7 a.m. to noon, basically along the beach. The applicants are also proposing to use a portion of beach parking lot B for a food truck, finish line, first aid, and portable restroom setup, as well as a small portion of lot C at the entrance for the start line and check-in. Once the event started, then that portion would be vacated. Participants would be allowed to park in lot E, which is over by the Ocean View Pavilion. Participants would start at lot C, run along the walkway along the beach itself out to the lighthouse, turn around and come back along Surfside Drive to the finish line. The applicant's anticipating approximately 150 participants, and they would start in 30 to 50 person groups to kind of spread out the event so we don't have a cluster of 150 participants all at once. The applicant is going to provide volunteers to clean up, provide directions along the route and whatnot. And as I mentioned, there's the potential for this to become an annual event, but for this time, we're looking at this just for this one June 30th event. So this is basically an overview of the entire course, and it would start basically here at Lot C, come along the beach, out to the lighthouse, back along Surfside Drive, and then finish here at Lot B. This is Lot E over here where the participants would be parking. And then a close-up of the area around the parking lots that would be used for the event itself. And then the portion of parking lot B, the northern part, which would be basically roped off for the morning of the event. Because this is an event at the beach, not only is a special use permit required, but it needs to be presented at a city council hearing due to our coastal program and zoning ordinance. As such, it becomes what we consider a project under the CEQA requirements. However, because this is an existing facility being used and it's a minor temporary use, the project is considered exempt from CEQA. So the recommended conditions, and there are several more, but these are just highlights, are that the hours would be, it actually should say 7 a.m., and it says 7 a.m. in the resolution, to noon with cleanup allowed before and after. Again, the applicant will be providing staffing for the event. They have already provided proof of insurance and have indemnified the city in that insurance document. Participants are doing so at their own risk, and vehicles that are not designated for the event or participants shall pay full parking fees. With regard to fiscal impact, as this was brought up at the beginning of the meeting, there's the potential loss for hourly parking for the 180 spaces that are proposed to be used in conjunction with this event. However, it is for the morning only, and Lot E generally is not used by the beach-going public. So we figure that the loss will be fairly minimal because the beach lots themselves will not be impacted for the duration of the day. There are potential revenues, though, from bed tax, merchant licenses, sales taxes, et cetera, from participants staying and using our businesses or visiting our businesses here in the city. And then the city expenditure would just be the trash bin and drop off and pick up. And so with that, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt this resolution that conditionally approves the special use permit. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The applicant, as well as Ms. Phillips from the Chamber of Commerce, are also here to answer questions.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, as we look at the routing on this, I'd like to ask the city attorney about possible conflicts for a couple council members who live in Surfside area.
You had a question, Mayor Pro Tem Berg.
Mr. Martin, can you address a little bit about what the concern was that Ms. Phillips had regarding the parking or permitting or?
Well, because we're not making them pay for parking basically for this event. So the concern is that normally folks that use our beach parking lots have to pay by the hour or pay for a day pass. Because we are exempting the participants and the spaces being used for the actual event itself, there is a potential loss of revenue for the city for that morning.
And this is a non-profit function though, right? And
that's correct. And that's why we're...
How about for the permit itself? Would it be possible perhaps to maybe have a multi-year permit to allow for streamlining of the process? I realize this is only their first year, but you know, are they planning on doing this every year?
Well, that's the anticipation, and so for this first year, because we were negotiating the deals right up to the 12th hour here, we felt that let's see how this works out, but we have done that for others. For instance, Copacabana's beach tournaments, for instance, those are now multi-year, so we don't keep coming back. And so if this does work out well, maybe with some fine tuning, we'll certainly look at bringing it back for a multi-year approval next time.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Fig.
To say that we're giving up 180 spaces is pretty bold because it's not used on a 365-day basis. Do we have a calculation as to what our revenues are on a per space, per year basis for the beach?
We could certainly get that. Okay. We do keep track of that through the finance
Because to
department.
say 180 spaces are going to be utilized on any given day is a pretty ambitious, okay. Have there been any other charges made to the applicant for this, for the privilege to be able to have this event?
Other than the application fee.
There was an application fee, and what was that?
It's $273.
Okay. And we're saying that, that the incidental costs of refuse pickup and security, if that's necessary, all fall within the realm of existing budgets?
The refuse does. Security has not been requested by the city, nor was it proposed.
So there's no expectation the city's going to need to add additional security, traffic control, what have you, for this event?
That's correct. If they do, if they are going to be out in the actual street, they will need to work with Public Works and get an encroachment permit.
Okay, where I'm heading, and maybe I'm premature, we need to take public testimony, is that we have community enhancement funds of which we've allocated in a general category $10,000 for human services. It would seem appropriate to me, rather than the city, again, subsidizing an event out of its general fund, that it gets cost recovery by way of the Community Enhancement Fund. So in other words, that we charge this to the applicant, the actual costs, including on a per parking space basis on an annual revenue cycle, but then we reimburse the applicant, which comes back to the general fund for the actual cost of providing the service. It comes from the Community Enhancement Fund. So the general fund isn't subsidizing these activities, but we have an enhancement fund that's supposed to be for human service activities, and this certainly qualifies. So when we get to a point of a motion, I'm going to recommend that we allocate those monies and we ask staff to develop a formal policy so that these kinds of events can occur without charging the applicant directly, but indirectly paying the general fund the equivalent cost through the Community Enhancement Fund. So we're not out of pocket.
Yes.
I
Mayor
think that's
Pro
a
Tem.
great idea. I didn't think of that myself, and yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Well, like I said, I may have been premature in making that suggestion, but it just seemed to me that we have the ability to sponsor or at least underwrite these expenses without the general fund subsidizing them.
Well, I think that's what the other fund is for, though. It's
Absolutely.
this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a capital idea, and I'm reflecting back. The Longshore Union has had a lemonade stand cancer walk for several years that I participated in. Jess Ramirez finally said to heck with it, didn't do it this last year. Was any government fund, city funds used for that, or was that just kind of, we had about 200 people, 300 people that usually participated in that?
I'm not aware of that one. That didn't actually come through my office, so we didn't have any participation as far as setting up the application and fees and whatnot on that.
Okay, as far as I know, I don't think there was much, other than they just reserved a parking space for us over there. But anyway, it's a capital idea, and I think we should do it, particularly in light of the lemonade stand cancer fundraising. Thank you very much.
I do have a question. I know we're up to the 11th hour. This event is at the end of June. Do you foresee that they're, like Mayor Pro Tem Berg asked, do you foresee that they're going to do an annual event so that we can catch up and, maybe see some of those other revenues that come in, like say people, this is a destination, for a 5K, and so they would come and spend money here and stay in hotels, that kind of thing, because we're up to like that date almost right now.
correct. Again, that's my understanding, but we can certainly ask the applicant and they can confirm that with us. But that was my understanding. They were considering this to be a multi-year event in the future.
And the way this route works is that I know that there's quite a bit of people who go out and fish on the pier, and they're out there pretty much all day, so the beginning of a Saturday. Do we foresee any kinds of concerns there with the parking and the fishing pier and the business that goes on there anyway?
Well, like I said, most of the parking will be over in Lot E, which is away from the beach. So only 30 of the spaces within Lot B would be used for the event, and again, only for the morning of the event itself. The rest of the parking lot B, all of A, C, and all of the street parking would be open. With regard to, say, the runners going back and forth, again, this is simply one shot up, one shot back along the street, so there's not going to be a whole lot of possibility for even pedestrian conflict, so to speak.
Okay, just figuring all that out. Okay, very good. So that we'll then take public testimony at this time. So if there's anyone wishing to speak on this matter at this point. All right, seeing none then, I will close the public testimony. And if there is any further discussion by the council or an action. Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Move to approve.
Okay. Is there a second? Yes.
Well, before,
I know, so.
The motion or the recommendation doesn't get into what I talked about earlier. What I would like to suggest is that we calculate what the actual expense is to the city on a per space, per annual revenue basis, and as well as the $273 fee that's been charged to the applicant, that those expenses be charged against the Community Enhancement Fund. And for those in the audience that are not familiar with it, that's a fund that the city and the Oxnard Harbor District have created as part of a settlement agreement that goes back several years ago. It doesn't come out of the city's wallet. And my suggestion is that we make certain that any kind of subsidies that occur for these kinds of events flow through the Community Enhancement Fund so that the general fund is made whole for those expenses. So what I'm saying here is that there should be no charge to the applicant, including the processing fee, but those expenses, including the foregone revenue from the 180 spaces, be charged to the Community Enhancement Fund. That's number one. And number two is that I would ask that staff create a policy dealing with these kinds of requests so that we can formalize how in which these community enhancement funds can be used for nonprofit organizations that come forward in the future. So it's a two-part suggestion, and Mr. Hensley, if you're willing to modify your motion to incorporate that, I'll second it.
I will modify the motion. Item 1, I think item 2 is something that'd be done down the road, and this is a big step towards doing that. And that's kind of a long term. So yes, I will modify my motion for charge against the Community Enhancement Fund and tally out how much it's going to be so there's no cost to the Cancer Society.
Okay, so yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Sure, I'd like to hear from the city attorney on that. Does that fall within the scope of the resolution as presented? What kind of, are there any legal pitfalls with doing it that way? We've got a time limit here. I'm not sure how we determine what the actual cost is also.
Well, the item before you is to approve the special use permit, which would be taken care of by the motion. The addition to the motion, which is to charge the loss of revenue relating to parking to the Community Improvement Fund is really a direction as opposed to the motion, so it needn't be included, and Councilmember Hensley didn't do so. And if the council would like that, they certainly can indicate it as a direction, even though it's not on the agenda. It's simply a direction to staff. specifically, what are you concerned about? I don't see anything.
Well, we have before us a simple the special use permit. The issue of using the community enhancement fund to reimburse an applicant for expenses somehow, and I understand the purpose to transfer this to the general fund, so the general fund doesn't absorb the cost. I don't know. I'm asking for a legal opinion, I guess, as to how we do that. I mean, is there any do you see any problems doing that?
I don't think it's necessary, because it also could be a direction to staff to do that transfer. It doesn't relate to the SUP itself, but I don't see any harm in including it either, since there's a motion on the floor to that. I don't see any harm to it, and so I wouldn't have an objection.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there was a review of the motion and adjusted by
Yes,
Councilmember Hensley. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye, and just so I'm clear, it's only relevant to this particular special use permit. You did not, Mr. Hensley, agree to having staff take a look at a policy that would be ongoing to deal with these kinds of periodic requests.
Yes, Councilmember
Thank you,
Hensley.
Madam Mayor. I think I expressed why I shortened that, contrary to what Mr. Figg had desired. I think we can take these and step at a time, so I still go for the original motion. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Attorney, can I make a motion now that deals with providing direction to staff to craft a policy to deal with these kinds of requests, and that our use of the $10,000 of human service funds that are available to us and that we have allocated for those kinds of activities? Is it appropriate for me to make that motion?
I don't see a problem with it, because once again, although it's not agendized, it's really just direction to staff to do something which you have the right to do without a motion. So I don't see a problem with you making a motion to that point.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so then that's a direction for staff. Mr. City Manager? All right, thank you. Did you have any questions on that motion?
No, I think I've got it. We will need to keep in mind that the community benefit funds do require buy-in from the Oxnard and Harbor District Board, but there has been that buy-in, at least for this year, for $10,000 worth of, I think we call it human services related projects. So I think for this year anyway, we're fine.
Okay.
Up to that $10,000 threshold.
All right, very good. So, Mr. City Attorney, did you have to read anything here on this one?
No, it's merely a resolution.
Okay, very good. All right. So then we move on to item 8B, consideration and major modification to plan development, conditional use permit, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. City Attorney, did you want to read anything in on that one?
No, the matter is listed in the agenda for the public to see. If approved, I will read the ordinance by title only.
Okay, very good. So I, as the mayor, verify posting of notice by the city clerk, and she motions yes. Council members declare any conflict at this point? None? Council members declare any ex parte contacts? Seeing none. I then officially open the public hearing. We'll hear staff presentation and move forward with this. So go ahead, Mr. Stewart.
Okay, thank you again, Madam Mayor, members of council. These next two items I'll handle like we did the last two modifications that came through a couple meetings ago, where because you've got the staff report in your packet and because these are really technical technicalities, I'm not going to go through a whole PowerPoint presentation again for these two items. So this particular item is a request by the applicant who is asking to be allowed to have basically sell adult use cannabis products in conjunction with a previously approved medical cannabis dispensary. This is the Freedom First Association dispensary. Bob Tatum is the owner and the applicant, and the address at the location is 2675 North Ventura Road, suites number 103 and 104. So again, back in October, the City Council approved the cannabis dispensary. This is actually the first one that opened for business in the city back in January. And so this is simply a request to be allowed to sell adult use cannabis from this existing facility. However, because this is a cannabis-related application, it does need to come back for City Council consideration as a major modification. But like I said, it really is a technicality more than anything here. So here we are this evening, and so it's staff's recommendation that the council open this hearing and take testimony and documented evidence, close the hearing to consider the evidence. After considering the evidence, adopt the attached resolution that conditionally approves this modification and determines the project is still categorically exempt from CEQA, and introduce the attached ordinance which approves the development agreement major modification, accompanied by title only, and waive further reading with approval to occur at the next meeting, or take such additional related action that may be desirable. And with regard to the development agreement, all of the terms basically remain the same, with the 5% of the gross revenues coming to the city's general fund, et cetera. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, this concludes my report.
Okay, I do have a speaker card for this, so why don't we go ahead and go forward with bringing this speaker forward. Kevin Elston, is Kevin here? You did want to talk about this item, right? 8B? Yes. B as in boy. All right.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the work you do for our community. My name is Kevin Elston. I live at 163 West Alta Green. And I just had a question that I probably could have asked one of my representatives, but I have been following this issue, and I noticed that in previous descriptions of the development agreement, it contained a requirement that the business require Port Hueneme residents and require them to hire Port Hueneme residents, and that they pay them a minimum of $20 an hour. And I didn't see that wording in this development agreement. I don't know if that's still part of the development agreement, but I guess that's my question.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, it is. All right. Mr. Stewart.
I can go ahead and quickly answer that. Yes, the general bones of the application, including these requirements and whatnot, were not proposed to be amended by the applicant, and therefore they would remain the same as originally approved back in October.
Okay, all right, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? All right, seeing none, then I will close the public testimony and we'll go into council discussions.
Move to approve.
All right, yes, Councilmember.
I'd like to have some discussion before we get into the motion. When we adopted the ordinance moving from medicinal to recreational, there was a 6-month hold period. And as I recall, that would pull us into July. And so here we are authorizing something that's in June. I'm not so much concerned by that as I'd be interested, and if I can, Madam Mayor, to address this question to our city manager and could address this to our chief of police. The lion share reason why that 6-month hold period was instituted was to give our police department an opportunity to ground truth their experiences with medicinal cannabis, which was already authorized. I haven't heard anything. Have we, what's been our experience? And have additional conditions been crafted either in the conditional use permit or in the development agreement that address those experiences? So again, I'm addressing this to you, but really it goes back to our chief.
Sure, I'll just start off by saying your memory is good. There was that 6-month period, and that period basically ends at the end of June, as I recall. So Mr. Tatum and Freedom First will not be allowed to actually operate and sell those products until that 6-month period is over.
Well, the ordinance hasn't even had its second reading yet, so that it would clearly take care of the rest of the period.
Yeah. And I would say, and we'll let the chief come up if he wants to add anything to this, but we've been extremely pleased with the lack of any calls for service, safety problems, disturbances at the 2 dispensaries that are currently operating. So they're really, there's not been a concern in terms of law enforcement, demand on law enforcement services, and I don't think that we are really adding any new requirements that are specific to adult use cannabis, other than those very stringent requirements that were part of the original approvals for building security, armed security, the other thing, all the background checks, the steps that the chief was instrumental in including in the process on the front end. Again, Tony, Chief, jump in if I'm not characterizing this correctly, but I don't think we've crafted any new regulations or requirements dealing specifically with adult use because of, at least so far, our very positive experience with medicinal.
Okay. You just want to validate what he said, or would you like to address us?
All right, thanks, Chief.
Don't give him an option.
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. So I will be presenting a marijuana dispensary update this evening to actually talk about some of issues, if any, along with an update on how many dispensaries we have, and even to give an update on how many employees are actually employed from the city of Port Hueneme. But to answer your question directly, we've had no problems in terms of noise complaints, smell complaints, traffic complaints, disturbing complaints from either of our 2 licensed dispensaries at this point. I'm actually pleasantly surprised. And so I am more than open to allowing the approval of adult use in the city of Port Hueneme because things have been running rather smoothly.
And I believe you were in attendance with me and the city attorney at a meeting that was hosted by our supervisor for this district, Kelly Long, as they grapple, the county and other cities within her district, grappled with this very question. We talked about the possibility of an advisory element to our process. Actually, this was introduced, I believe, it was in conjunction with the ordinance that set the stage for adult use cannabis, that we talked about an advisory process where various key stakeholders, I'll call them, in this case it was the County Behavioral Health Department that was requesting to have a seat at the table, so to speak, but we have schools that may be impacted and others that would have an interest. And we talked about formalizing that as part of our implementing resolution, which right now is just for medicinal. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because it seemed to me that that was a pretty good idea to allow our stakeholders to be able to kind of be our heartbeat, to monitor, to evaluate, and to provide feedback on the success of our programs. Any thoughts about that?
So since our meeting with Ventura County Behavioral Health, I've actually had a couple of follow-up meetings with Mr. Tovar and Mr. Hicks. And in part of my presentation today, I'll be showing you how we are working together in some of the media or some of the flyers that we have put together that we are now requiring our dispensaries to place in their establishments. And it'll show you how we're working with the Office of Traffic Safety, Ventura County Behavioral Health, to actually get the information out to our public. So that was really the biggest stakeholder that I can think of right now at this point. And then something in the near future, as soon as we get more than 5 dispensaries open, I plan on having mandatory meetings with all of the managers or establishment owners to meet with the chief of police so we can talk about trends, pending issues, and things of that nature, so we can leave that a meeting open for discussion and to really talk about what's happening in our city.
So at this point, you don't see the necessity to amend our implementing resolution that really kind of sets this framework, this process?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Hensley. Go ahead. No, I
No,
think
I-
he was ending.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief Salinas, I would like to kind of question and bring it back even before you got here. We had a lot of problems with the homeless people in that 99-cent shopping center. And even one lady from Hueneme Bay said, I see armed guards, like it was something terrible. But it's like seeing a police officer. And from what I understand, the homeless that created kind of a gang around there has been kind of pushed off. So in essence, it's kind of a support of your police department. It's almost, in a sense, auxiliary on that local spot, is it not?
Yes, especially we'll call it the northwest part of the shopping center. In fact, one of the Freedom First security guards thwarted a bicycle theft in progress and actually prevented it from happening, called us, and we ended up attempting to chase the suspect in that scenario, as well as DBO, who's employing their security company, is actually going to have an office there in one of the medical buildings, and they're actually in conversations now with the property owner of the entire property center shopping lot to provide security for that shopping center.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the chief or for Mr. Stewart?
Move to approve.
So I did have a question. Hold on just a second.
Go ahead.
I'm just looking to see if any of my colleagues have any questions. So, Mr. Stewart, this would be then the second cannabis-related business that's come to us for an adult use?
I think it would actually be the third at this point.
Third?
But because these couple that are coming back as modifications, they were early in the process before we had approved the adult use ordinance, so they're needing to come back through the process. But the later ones, for instance, Mr. Whippo over at the former Top Deck Bar, the one that we recently approved, and Mr. Lalji up next to HPCC, those came in as both recreational and medicinal at the time.
I see.
They're both under construction still, or not even beginning construction, so it'll be a while out before they actually start sales out there, well beyond our June 18th cutoff for this.
And so adult use is 21 and older?
That's correct.
And they have to actually walk in with an ID that says that they can calculate their age?
Correct, and the way that we're requiring this is basically, as Mr. Butler mentioned before, we have quite a process that we vetted these all through, and they came through basically as medicinal, where they had the lobby and the check-in and whatnot. All of these businesses will maintain those, so again, there will be a receptionist checking the ID of each person coming in, checking, for instance, how much they are allowed to buy. And whatnot. So that will continue to occur with these adult use businesses.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Then, okay, Mr.
And back
Hensley.
to move to approve.
Is there a second?
A second.
Madam City Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
No. So the motion carries in 4-1. And anything to be read here?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead,
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
City
Mayor.
Attorney.
Since the approving motion authorizes reading by title only, the title for this ordinance is an ordinance approving and adopting an amended development agreement under Government Code Section 65864 to 65869.5, and ordinance number 727 and ordinance number 734 of the Port Hueneme Municipal Code relating to the operation of a cannabis facility, Freedom First Association. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So next we have item 8C, another public hearing. And this is consideration of major modification to plan development, conditional use permit, et cetera, et cetera. I, as the mayor, verify the posting of notice by city clerk. So she says yes. Council members declare any conflict at this point? Seeing none. Council members declare any ex parte contacts? Seeing none. Mayor then opens up the public hearing. We'll have staff presentation and proceed forward on this. So, Mr. Tony Stewart, you're up again.
Yes, I am, and one more after this. Thank you again. So this is very similar to our previous application that we just considered. This is an application this time by Safeport, which is located at 353 West Channel Islands Boulevard. You may know the applicants as Lonnie and Nancy Jarvis. Back in December 4th of 2017, their medicinal cannabis dispensary was approved, and basically right after that is when we approved the adult use, but they wanted to move forward at the time. So here we are back again with another modification request to allow the sale of adult use cannabis at their, once it's constructed and open, at their dispensary. Again, with regard to the development agreement, again, this is 5% gross sales of their revenues that would be a benefit towards our general fund. None of the actual application requirements submitted previously have been modified by the applicant nor staff. So at this point, again, it's simply a request to be allowed to sell adult use cannabis at this dispensary once it is open for business. And so with that, it is staff's recommendation that this council again open the public hearing and take testimony to close the hearing and consider this evidence. After considering the evidence, approve the resolution that conditionally approves the conditional use permit modification and determines the project is still categorically exempt from CEQA, and also introduce the attached ordinance which approves the development agreement modification, accompanied by title only, and waive further reading with approval to follow at the next regularly scheduled council meeting, or forward to take such additional related action. So at this point, and this concludes my brief presentation. If you have any questions, I am available to answer them.
Okay, so I don't have any speaker cards for this item, but is there anyone wanting to speak on 8C from the public? Seeing none, then I will close the public testimony, and we will then continue on with council discussion and possible action. Are any questions for the staff?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the resolution and introduce the ordinance to be read by title only, further reading being waived.
I second the motion.
Okay, so Madam City Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig?
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke?
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp?
No. So then we have this motion approved 4-1, and Mr. City Attorney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The title of the ordinance is an ordinance approving and adopting an amended development agreement under Government Code Sections 65864 to 65869.5 and ordinance number 727 and ordinance number 734 of the Port Hueneme Municipal Code relating to the operation of a cannabis facility, Safeport.
All right, thank you. So then with that, we move on to item 8D. It's also a public hearing, Plan Development Conditional Use Permit. And with that, I will verify then the notice posted by the city clerk, and she says yes. Council members declare any conflict?
Yes, this application is within 300 feet of property I own in the vicinity. And my question to the city attorney is, there seems to be a connection back to the Industrial Avenue site as well. So if I have a conflict regarding this particular location and this application, does it also conflict me out for the property on Industrial Avenue?
No. And the reason is that these are two complete separate applications, and one does not depend upon the other whatsoever.
So at that point, I'll recuse myself.
Okay. Okay, so with that, notice then that Councilmember Fig has recused himself from this item, A8D. Council members declare any ex parte contacts. I think that's where we were. None. Seeing none. All right, so then I will open up the public hearing and hear staff presentation. We'll move forward on this item. Go ahead, Mr. Stewart.
Great, thank you. Last one for the evening. So this one is a brand new application for us, so I will go into the more thorough detail that I generally do with our first-time applicants. This is a plan development slash CUP 847, as well as development agreement number 848, and it's for the application known as Port Retail, which is for a cannabis dispensary, and this would be both for adult use and medicinal. With regard to this, what makes this application a little bit unique, Mr. Allen, on behalf of Port Retail, he and his partners are also in the process of purchasing our Industrial Avenue property. That would be used for their manufacturing and cultivation purposes, but because that's zoned M1 or manufacturing, retail uses are not allowed in that zone. So this particular location up on Channel Islands Boulevard, which is zoned commercial, would be basically the retail arm of their larger business. And at the end here, the applicants are here, and they'll get up and introduce themselves and present their overall picture for you. As I mentioned, the project is located at 437 West Channel Islands Boulevard. It is zoned C1, which does allow dispensaries within it. Subject to the conditional use permit, development agreement, and approval of the certificate of approval, which was granted back on May 30th by the city manager. So quickly, the location here, Channel Islands, Patterson, this is McDonald's. These are the Harbor Lights residences behind, and then we've got similar mixed use of commercial uses along the street here. Nearest school is Marina West Elementary in the city of Oxnard, and it's approximately 3,000 feet away, which is well outside of the 600-foot distance that the state law requires. The applicant is not proposing any changes to the site plan itself. So there's the site plan basically showing the building and the shared parking for all of the uses within that building, as well as shared access between the existing properties to the east and west. This is a picture of the building itself, showing the suite basically kind of in the middle right next to the existing Avis rent-a-car. And then with regard to the floor plan, again, there would be a lobby with the check-in at reception, the general sales area, and then the back area for staff, the vault, for instance, inventory storage and whatnot. Hours of operation would be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days per week. Again, customers need to be 21 years of age or older, no loitering allowed. Odor control would be, again, filter systems similar to other dispensaries that we've approved. There will be guards on the site in the dispensary. Staffing also age 21 years of age or older. And then community benefits would be donations particularly focused on REACH and the Boys and Girls Club. And it should be noted that if the manufacturing and the cultivation uses by the applicant are also approved in the future, that would provide an even larger community benefit potential. With regard to the development agreement, this is standard language that's in basically all of our development agreements for dispensaries thus far. Because the city doesn't have an actual cannabis tax, we enter into these development agreements with each of the cannabis business owners. And specifically, this development agreement would again require the applicant to pay 5% of their annual gross revenues to the city's general fund, maintain all books and records accurately, and pay for up to 2 audits by the city per year, or the city's consultant at least. And then obtain a certificate of occupancy for the dispensary within 1 year after this development agreement becomes effective. With regard to the California Environmental Quality Act, the project is exempt from it because it is basically a request to operate a retail use within a existing retail suite with no expansion of use or changes to the building or site. With regard to the potential fiscal impact, and this is just for the dispensary, this is not for the future cultivation or manufacturing. The applicant's looking at generating a little over $4.2 million the first year, a little over $6.2 million the second, and a little over $6.7 million the third year. And at 5% of that back to the city, that means we'd be receiving is expected to be a little under $212,000 the first year, a little over $312,000 the second, and about $335,000 by the third year. And so with that, staff recommends that, again, the council open the public hearing and take evidence, close the hearing and consider this evidence. 3, after considering the evidence, adopt the attached resolution that conditionally approves the conditional use permit and declares the project exempt from CEQA. And also introduce the ordinance which approves the development agreement accompanied by title only, and wait for the reading with approval to follow at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. Or 4, take such additional related actions necessary or desirable. And with that, this concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, as I mentioned, the applicant and his team are here to introduce themselves to you as a potential purchaser of the city's property and explain the larger picture of their business for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. I do have a speaker card by Michael Allen. You're the managing partner. Okay, so Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City staff. Mr. Stewart did actually a really wonderful job explaining our business, so I will be brief and provide just really a quick overview and an introduction to ourselves. My name is Michael Allen. Colin Hicks and Patrick Spillane are also here along with me, who are managing partners of the business, Port Retail, which is up for discussion today. Port Retail, as mentioned, is our dispensary location, our proposed dispensary location. It is proposed to be both medicinal, adult use, and include delivery services as well. We very much are focused on being able to provide the greatest quality product and, most importantly, education to our patients and our patrons, and that's absolutely what our business will focus on. This, as mentioned already, is a separate application and a separate business, but same partners and working together along with the Industrial Way application. The Industrial Way property, the City Council voted last month on the purchase and sales agreement. We're in the process of entering escrow. That business is intended to be a cultivation, manufacturing, extraction, and distribution business. The operation that will happen at Industrial Way will produce a number of products that will be fed into through the distribution license within Industrial Way to the Port Retail location, where those products will be sold at a retail from a retail site. Those products at Industrial Way, the proposed business at Industrial Way, will also support a number of other businesses, hopefully here in Port Hueneme and beyond. So really briefly, I just want to make sure that we're providing some transparency among all the businesses, and really wanted to give our thank you and our gratitude to Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and the city staff who have been really incredible to work with, and we've been really grateful for their support. Okay. So happy to answer any questions or allow you to move on. Thank you.
All right, so are there any other speakers wishing to speak on this matter? All right, so then we'll go to staff if you have any questions for either Mr. Allen or Mr. Stewart. I do have a question. Were you going to move or? No, I do have a question. Thank you. So the delivery portion of these cannabis businesses, are they delivering for personal use as well?
Correct. Excuse me, getting a little tired of speaking here. So there's a difference between delivery and distribution. The distribution is getting the product from the manufacturer to the dispensary itself, which is why it's considered basically a manufacturing type use. The delivery service is just that, where the drivers are taking the product from the dispensary and taking it out to the actual clients. So it is basically, for instance, if you were not able to get into the dispensary, for instance, you could call up and have it delivered to you as long as you were one of the members or could verify that you were able to accept delivery of cannabis, but that it is for personal use.
Okay, just wanted to confirm all of that. Okay. Any other questions? All right, so Councilmember Sharkey?
I will move to approve the resolution and introduce the ordinance to be read by title only for the reading being waived.
Second the motion.
Okay, so could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hensley,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke,
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp.
No. So then the motion carries 4-1, and Mr. City Attorney, would you care to?
Thank you,
read
Madam
something?
Mayor.
Oh, 3-1, sorry.
The ordinance approved has the title of an ordinance approving and adopting a development agreement under Code Section 65864 to 65869.5, and ordinance number 727 and ordinance number 734. By the way, if those sound familiar, they are. Of the Port Hueneme Municipal Code relating to the operation of a cannabis facility, Port Retail, LLC, DBA Port Retail.
Okay, thank you. And then we move on to item 8.
We should ask Councilmember Fig.
Yeah, Mr. Fig to come back, sorry.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Okay, so we then go to item 8E, another hearing, public hearing. This is for several resolutions ordering the levy and collection of annual assessments, as well as approval of an agreement with the Ventura County Auditor Controller. And I will then verify the posting of the notice by the city clerk, and she says yes. Council members declare any conflict at this point? Seeing none. Council members declare any ex parte contacts? Seeing none. Is this where we then state that several of us have met individually with the city manager and the auditor controller on that issue, right? So does that matter at this point? No?
No, because that's in furtherance of determining the appropriateness of the procedure and so
Okay.
on. It's not with somebody affected by it that's trying to lobby you.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then at this point, I'll open up the public hearing. We'll hear staff presentations and then move forward with the item. Who will then be making the presentation? Mr. Villafana.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff. Before you, there are 3 resolutions. The resolutions ordering the levy and collection of the annual assessments for the Assessment District 87-1, Assessment District 91-1, and Assessment District 95-3, and approval of an agreement with the Ventura County Auditor Controller for billing of direct assessments. Staff is recommending that at the close of the public hearing, adopt the resolutions below and approve the agreement for billing of direct assessments with the Ventura County Auditor Controller, and direct the city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the staff. The resolutions are, we have the Lighting Maintenance Assessment District, that's 87-1. We have the Parkway Median Maintenance Assessment District, that's 91-1. We have the Port Hueneme Drainage Maintenance Assessment District, 95-3. And for the background and analysis, the city formed the Lighting Maintenance District, number 87-1 in 1988, for the purpose of maintaining and servicing the public lighting facilities owned by either the city or Southern California Edison and located within the public right-of-way. The Parkway and Median Maintenance Assessment District, 91-1, was formed in 1991 for the purpose of maintaining landscaping in the parkways and medians within the public right-of-way. In 1995, the city formed the Port Hueneme Park Maintenance Assessment District, 95-3, for the purpose of maintaining city parks. In 1997, this latter district was renamed the Port Hueneme Drainage Maintenance District, and the description of maintenance and improvements was modified to conform with the requirements of Proposition 218. At its meeting on June 4th, 2018, the City Council adopted resolutions of intention which initiated the annual proceedings related to the districts for fiscal year 18-19, set forth the work to be done in the districts, primarily approved by the engineer's report for the districts. Set June 18th, 2018 at 6:30 in the council chambers, time and place for the required public hearings to review the cost of the capital maintenance and operations of the districts, to receive and consider any protests to the work or assessments, and to set the annual assessments on properties within the district. The resolutions ordering the levy and collection of the assessments within the districts presented herein for consideration and adoption are the final resolutions that must be adopted to levy the annual assessments for the 3 existing assessment districts. The resolutions approve and adopt the engineer's report on file with the city clerk, conform the diagrams and assessments prepared in connection with the districts, order the levy and collection of assessments within the district, and authorize and direct the city clerk to file certified copies of the diagrams and assessments with the county auditor of the County of Ventura no later than July 1st. The engineer's reports describe the improvements, maintenance, and assessment methodology relating to each district due to the requirements of Proposition 218. The same assessment calculation methodology has been used in fiscal year 2018-19. Engineer's reports was used in 2017 and 18. If an increase in rates to cover the actual cost for maintaining assessments is desired, then Proposition 218 requirements would need to be followed. The procedure would require an election to approve the new tax. The contemplated work in fiscal year 2018-2019 relates exclusively to the improvements and maintenance work, which are intended to qualify for the capital costs, maintenance, and operations exemption, one of the grandfather exceptions set forth in Prop 218. The rates this year are the same as prior years. Fiscal impact. For the proposed maintenance and improvement expenses will be provided by the assessment charges in the engineer reports and will be levied against those properties receiving special benefit from the services provided. The total revenues generated from these assessments will be $486,373. The estimated expense is $575,460. The amount of $89,087 will be subsidized by the general fund. The estimated revenue for the lighting maintenance assessment district 87-1 is $122,511, with an estimated expense of $151,026. This district will have a deficit of $28,515. The estimated revenue for Parkway and Median Maintenance Assessment District number 91-1 is $178,813, with an estimated expense of $241,098. This district will have a deficit of $62,285. The estimated revenue for the Port Hueneme Drainage Maintenance Assessment District number 95-3 is $185,049, with an estimated expense of $183,336. The district will have an estimated surplus of $1,713, and we will be spending $110,000 working on bubbling springs and stream bed alteration, basically trying to clean the reeds out of bubbling springs along the total length of the drainage course. The fees and services to be collected by the county auditor controller are dedicated by the agreement for the billing of direct assessments. And one comment, last year we were directed by council to provide a much better accounting practice. My predecessors had been a little neglect on that. And so we instituted in July a work order process to track the costs. And we feel confident that these accurately reflect the costs for the districts. And it should be noted that the Parkway and Median Maintenance Assessment District now includes the water costs, which had not been included previously and was requested by council to be accounted for this fiscal year. So this is where we stand. Are there any questions?
Okay, are there any questions for staff? Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, 3 brief questions if I can, Mr. Villafana. Number one, on the resolution for lighting, are we going to look towards LED? I think you already answered it one time before. I want to confirm.
We are moving to LED whenever we have a street light. We have approximately 50 street lights that are city-owned. Whenever those go out, we will be having those replaced with LED. And Edison is also, I cannot give you the exact count, but yes, we are moving in that direction.
Okay, now we're able to use, just replace the snakehead, or do you have to replace the whole pole?
No, just the snakehead, if you will.
Okay, thank you. The second question is the median maintenance. We had looked at it a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of infractions as far as viewing of driving down the road and trees in the road, and we kind of put that off. Have we made any more directions towards that since we're going to be working on the medians?
Traffic safety is paramount, so whenever we see something that's an obstruction or it's brought to our attention, we will move on that. Okay. But we do have a regular program for trimming the trees. We have a services contract that we have let, and in conjunction with our city arborist who coordinates that, we are going methodically through the city, so we are doing that.
Okay. Then if we may, Mrs. McDowell over here at the library up there has when you make a left-hand turn coming out of that library area, it's difficult. Can we reassess that and see if we can get it modified?
I'll have to look and see if that's in the city right-of-way, then we can take care of that. I'll have to meet with her, but I will do that.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam
Councilmember
Mayor. I appreciate the fact that you've been able to nail down the accounting, but I think the number is about the same as what we talked about 6-8 months ago, a $90,000 subsidy to the general fund. I thought the additional direction was to get full cost recovery so that the assessment district would be able to not rely upon a subsidy to the general fund. We also talked about the fact that the law does allow for recovery from tax-exempt entities such as the Navy base. Have staff looked further into that issue? I thought we made that a priority, and if not, I'm going to ask that it be reflected as a goal for the forthcoming budget cycle.
We have not looked in depth into that, and we certainly, I'll confer with our city attorney as to see what the process is. It is a 218 process.
I'm sorry, can you speak up a little bit?
No, we did not investigate that further. We can make it a goal. I did discuss briefly today with our city attorney that any modification would require, as the text said, a 218 process. And so I'll have to confer with them and see how we can go forward. And then I can come back to the council and report on the progress and what we're doing to look into those additional cost recovery so that there is no, or lessen the subsidy by the general fund.
Okay, well, again, I would hope to see that reflected in the goals for the forthcoming.
Yeah, and you'll recall also, Councilmember Figg, that it's actually one of the strategic action plan items, I think, deals with looking at our assessment district structure, how it's working, where we're subsidizing from the general fund, and what has changed over the last 25 or 30 years since these were established in terms of what our options are for not only solving the subsidy issue, but possibly reducing general fund costs in other areas if it made sense to do additional assessment districts somewhere. So that's something that I'm, from my office, handling as part of the strategic action plan. We'll incorporate Public Works into that. But I know that was a big priority, or it was one of the items that was listed.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so with that then, we'll see if we have any public testimony. Would anybody wish to speak on this matter? I don't have a speaker card, but just knowing that it's a public hearing. So seeing none, I will close then the public testimony portion of this and refer back to my city council for other discussion or possible action.
Move to approve all three items.
And I'll second.
Okay. And Mr. City Attorney, is that okay with the motion?
To approve all three?
All three?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay, very good. All right, so motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So motion carries 5-0. And is there anything that you need to do at this point, Mr. City Attorney?
No, there are resolutions. They don't require reading.
Okay, very good. So we move on to item number 9. And we
Madam
have-
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, I would like to just make a comment about something that was done this last week and a half. The water department is tasked with lead testing at the schools in the city of Port Hueneme. And we're required to do it during the school year while they're in operation. And I just wanted to let the council know and the public know that the public schools and the private school, the Hueneme Christian School, were tested in accordance with state regulations, and there was no lead found in any of the water systems there. So I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of that.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Villafona. So let's have our police chief Salinas come up for his report, his monthly crime update.
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, I'm here to give us our monthly crime update, which covers up till the end of May. We'll wait for the PowerPoint to set up here. So all the way through the month of May, I'll just point out some significant categories for the month of May. As you'll see, we haven't had any homicides or rapes or robberies during the month of May. We did have 4 aggravated assaults, and that pretty much covers 2 brandishings with either a gun or a knife and 2 domestic violence strangulation cases. And that's the reason for the 4 aggravated assaults in that category. People generally associate stabbings or shootings with that category, but in this case, that's how it's broken down. And then if you look over to your right under larcenies, that also is continuing to be a driving force in our crime rate here with a 22, for the month of May. So thus far, as compared to last year, our violent crime rate is up 230% and our property crime rate is up 36%. But when we're talking in terms of violent crime rate, our numbers are very low. So when you're talking, last year we had 13 and thus far we've had 30. It just takes just a few to start moving those numbers. So it's nothing really to be alarmed about. And again, the biggest thing is our aggravated assault category where we are now counting domestic violence strangulations. And there you see those 2 categories where last year we only had 5 up until this point, and now we've had 19 up to this point. And in the larceny category, last year we had 107, and already this year we have 137. So those 2 categories are the ones that really are cause for the increase up until this year, up until this month. So this past June 7th, we had our Special Olympics torch run. We carried the Flame of Hope through our city, which started in Ventura, came through Oxnard, through Port Hueneme, into the county area, and then was carried by the Ventura County Point Mugu base to the county line. And we participated in this event. Here you see our Deputy City Manager partaking in the event, along with several other city employees, not just police. And here we have our firefighters, too, from County Station 53 participating in the event. And then during the event, we actually got stopped by the train for 15 minutes during our run, which was good for some of us because we got to take a break, because our leg is 5.7 miles. And so I have to congratulate some of our runners who actually finished the entire length, but they got a nice little break there, which was good. Quick fireworks update. So as you know, we adopted our new fireworks ordinance this year, which should help us in combating fireworks. The fireworks calls have already started. We had a dozen last week. We've already started to receive emails, and this is in spite of Fillmore not even selling fireworks yet. They won't start selling fireworks till a week before the 4th of July. So it's the season for it. We're doing all that we can to get the message out. As you can see by the flyers, we'll be posting up boards at the beach And the fire chief and I recently did a video to get it out on the public, to the news outlets, in terms of fireworks are strictly prohibited in the city of Port Hueneme. And of course, I brought the video to show to you as a draft version, just in case you have any commentary or any suggestions, and it won't be finalized till the end of this week. So hopefully this works. Let's try that again. Let me go back. If you can just take the mouse and click in the middle of the screen. It is going to be a little jumpy.
Hi, I'm Fire Chief John McNeil with the Ventura County Fire Department.
And I'm Chief Andrew Salinas with your Port Hueneme Police Department.
Chief Salinas and I would like to bring you an important message about fireworks.
While this is the time to celebrate our independence, it is also a time to be cognizant of the fact that fireworks are both dangerous and illegal.
Fireworks are strictly prohibited in the city of Port Hueneme as they can lead to serious injuries and fires to structures, vehicles, and other areas.
Really wanted to stress that point.
Was that an effigy by any chance? And if so, who?
Caused by these noises. Each year, the Port Hueneme Police Department receives hundreds of complaints regarding the illegal use of fireworks. Anyone possessing, storing, selling, using, transporting, or handling fireworks is subject to arrest or fines of up to $1,000. With our new fireworks ordinance, which goes into effect this year, anyone hosting the use of fireworks at their residence is also subject to a $1,000 fine.
Members of the public who want to dispose of illegal fireworks can stop by the Port Hueneme Fire Station to hand over fireworks without facing penalties.
We live in a community which centers around a military installation along with several retirement communities. Many of these military veterans have retired in our beautiful community and call Port Hueneme their home. These veterans have valiantly served in our armed forces, and we are asking people to be considerate of the emotional distress that may be caused by the use of fireworks. We want to thank our residents for making our community a safer place to live in the friendly city by the sea.
The city encourages the public to enjoy the free annual fireworks show at the Channel Islands Harbor. For more information, visit channelislandsharbor.org.
Thank you. So that was our attempt to send the message in a video format, and hopefully some people respond to it. But again, we're doing all that we can to get that message out there that it is strictly prohibited in the city of Port Hueneme. So we had our first paper shredding event here in the city of Port Hueneme. Hopefully everyone saw it, whether it be on Facebook, social media. We sent out press releases. It was on the city webpage. There was flyers all over the place. And as a result, we had 136 people show up for the event. Dropped off 9,900 pounds, which was equivalent to nearly 5 tons of paper at this event, which transpired 4 hours and was handled by 7 of our police explorers. As you can see, there's a line of cars right there just waiting to show up and drop off their paper. And then here's a picture of, you can see the stack on the right there of all the items that were used to bring that paper here, just to show just how much paper we shredded that day. So one of the big questions that were asked on that day by the people is, when are we going to do this again? So a lot of it was to gauge how successful this first event was. And I would venture to say that it needs a second event here probably in the next 6 months. And then we'll, again, take another look to see if it's necessary again. But I would consider this a big success. And thanks to the idea of Councilman Will Berg, we jumped on this and we succeeded. And the event cost the city about $1,000. So I think it was well worth the effort, and I think our residents appreciated what we did. So I made mention of a marijuana dispensary update. So thus far we have 2 dispensaries, medical dispensaries open right now still, Freedom First and Hueneme Patient Co-op. After speaking with the other 3 that have been approved but aren't open yet, SafePort hopes to open by the end of July. Same with Emerald Perspective, and DBO has told me that they expect to open in the first week of July. So we'll see if that comes true. The pictures you see here is Freedom First actually hosted the entire traffic unit of the Oxnard Police Department to give them a briefing on the dispensary, to brief them on distribution, deliveries, and how the whole system works. So the Oxnard Police Department can use that to not only become experts, use it in courtroom testimony, and kind of use it when they're stopping people to find out how exactly the whole process works. So the question that was recently brought up by one of our residents was, are our dispensaries hiring employees from the city of Port Hueneme? So I decided to do a little study to find out. And so here it is. DBO has 14 employees, Freedom First has 14 employees, and Hueneme Patient Co-op has 11. Of those, DBO employs 4 people from the city of Port Hueneme, Freedom First 3, and Hueneme Patient Co-op 3. So they are employing people from within our city. And that's a pretty good ratio considering they don't have very many employees. I mean, they have 14 employees, so about a quarter of their employees are from our city, which is good. So I would say they're doing what they said they're going to do. About 2 months ago, I attended a community meeting. I made a community presentation at Mar Vista. One of their biggest complaints was emergency preparedness. I had made mention of this at our previous meeting. And so on June 4th, myself, along with Sergeant Starna, Chief McNeil, along with Fire Station 53, went and did a presentation for all of the community residents at Mar Vista. About 35 people showed up. We gave a presentation on the police side in terms of police response, how to report a crime, what to do if you have an active shooter. The fire department talked about smoke alarms, what to do in case of an earthquake, in case of a fire, and so forth. So, and as a result of showing up, the police department had these emergency contact phone number magnets made for the refrigerators of all of our attendees. So they have all the important numbers there ready at their disposal, along with the important websites that they can get emergency information or get information from the city of Port Hueneme. And the city of Port Hueneme Housing also bought the flashlights, so in case of a power outage, they now all have flashlights assigned to their specific units. To give you a department update, we've now expanded our live scan hours. We are now available for live scan from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 8:30 to 4. And we have now increased our, as a result, increased our volume of people that are now coming into the police department for this service. I recently did a My Cop radio show, which is the Mixteco Indigenous community organization project, and they now have a radio station. So I felt it important to go on the radio station and talk about the city of Port Hueneme and the services we provide to that specific community, especially since we now have a translation contract with MyCop. And I talked about immigration laws and for them to not fear the police department, and that we're here for them and we don't care about their immigration status, that we are here to provide a service and we're here to protect everybody here in the United States. Madam Mayor Schnaps talked about translating our emergency preparedness booklet into Spanish, so that's completely done. In fact, they're printed on the back desk there. So here are some snippets of that brochure. It's also been posted online, so we now have that posted both in English and in Spanish online for our community residents, along with printed copies that we'll be using at different presentations. We talked about working with Ventura County Behavioral Health in terms of marijuana and putting out that information, that educational and awareness information. Here's a copy of our first edition. As you can see, the 3 logos there on the bottom, which is the flyers actually paid for by the Office of Traffic Safety. It was put together by Ventura County Behavioral Health and approved by the Port Hueneme Police Department. And it talks about properly storing your marijuana, talks about edibles, child safety, pet safety, and important numbers to call, such as poison control, in both English and in Spanish. And then in July, expect to have me give an update on our homeless issue, and hopefully we'll have our DUI cost recovery ordinance to present to council at that time, and then of course our June crime statistics. If there's any questions at this point.
Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
First, a compliment. The fireworks, I see that the city of Oxnard is using your idea that you started out last year, putting up the roadside flashing lights. So you made a mark with Oxnard, and keep up the good work. They're already starting to come off, and I've sent you a couple of emails on it. The question that I'm concerned about is What is your specific number of officers that you have right now for being out in the streets? And then there's a follow-up question.
Right now, we're at minimum staffing, and we deploy a minimum of 3 officers out on any one shift.
30?
3.
3. That's basically it. How many do you have off that's incapacitated or anything like that?
Right now, I believe we have 4 officers that are injured on duty and out of work.
Whoa. So you're kind of running a ragged edge as far as staffing.
We're working at minimum staffing, but we're getting through it.
Okay. I kind of encourage the council and the people here to realize the importance of our police department and law enforcement. So we need to look towards this more. When they're pressed up against the wall this much, it's a stress on them, and they're working a lot of hours. So I hope everybody takes that in consideration. Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yes, Chief, I mean, as Mr. Hensley just mentioned, I mean, we're already seeing fireworks getting shot off, and you know, had some complaints from constituents, et cetera. But I will say that I noticed a huge difference last year from the year before. You know, where I live, I can see the city of Oxnard, and you could pretty much tell where the city limits were. So, you know, I realize that, you know, Oxnard surrounds us, and folks don't necessarily know where the city limits are, but I think the improvement I've seen in terms of fireworks being shot off in this city has just been remarkable. So let's hope that continues.
And then hopefully with this new ordinance, we can get our residents to help us limit the amount of fireworks going off by giving us specific locations where it's occurring.
Okay. Any others? Chief, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate the video that you had about the fireworks and the intentional effort to have people turn in their fireworks as well, right? So the
Yes.
fire department is taking those?
Yes.
Yeah, no questions asked?
No
They'll
questions
take it.
asked.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, we move on to item number 10, Community Development Director, reports and comments. Mr. Stewart? So you have a housing program update for us?
I do.
Okay.
One of the team does. So, yes, as I mentioned in my last update to you, among the many things that the Community Development Department does, one of the things we continue to do are what we call housing rehabilitation programs, as opposed to something that the Housing Authority does. And with me is Jennifer Areola, who is one of our program managers, and she is the person who not only is in charge of our parking enforcement team, but she handles these programs. Coming this October, Jennifer will have been with the city for 28 years, 20 of those actually with community development, believe it or not. So she pretty much knows what she's doing here, so I'll go ahead and turn it over, and she can explain the 2 programs that she works with, and then I'll go ahead and follow up with some of the plans we have for them in the coming months. Thank you, Jennifer.
Good evening, Madam Mayor.
No, I think you need to.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. I said, good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. The 2 programs that we have available to the residents of Port Hueneme for our housing rehabilitation would be our home maintenance incentive rebate program, and then also our residential rehabilitation loan program. These programs have been in existence since 1978. I will start with the rebate program first, tell you a little bit about that. So the properties that are eligible to participate are basically the older single-family homes, and also some apartment complexes up to 4 units, and they're basically you know, in the area between Bryce Canyon to the north, J Street to the east, Hueneme Road to the south, and then the base and the harbor to the west. And people who participate in this program, it's open to low, moderate, in high-income households and also to investor owners. The rebate program allows participants to get anywhere between a 10 to 35% rebate on exterior property improvements such as new exterior painting, new roof, new windows, new garage doors, new exterior doors, front yard landscaping. They do have to pay for their costs out of pocket, and then at the end of the project, the city will give them a rebate. They do need to submit an application first and have an inspection done before they start the work. And the purpose of the inspection is to make sure that what they want to do qualifies for a rebate, and then also to make sure there aren't any other code-related items that need to be addressed. And if that's the case, then they will also receive a rebate on those code-related items. They have 90 days to complete the work. They do have to hire somebody who has a city business license. And I think that's about it for the rebate program. Do you have any questions on that?
Are there any questions for Ms. Ariola? Okay.
So the other program we have is the rehab loan program, which allows property owners in the same area to make interior and exterior property improvements. So that's one of the differences. They can do interior repairs. They do have to have equity in the property. And the great thing about this program is that it's a deferred loan, so there are no monthly payments required as long as they have equity in the property. So this allows them to make several property improvements at one time and be able to live comfortably in the home. This program, the city works with the property owner through the entire process. We, once they submit an application, we go out and we do an inspection of their property, a full interior and exterior inspection. We order termite reports, and we're actually required to order lead. We're required to test for lead paint as well, but we do prepare the work write-up on behalf of the owner. We put out the job to bid to contractors. We basically are with them the entire program. We monitor the work. We monitor the payments to the contractor. And contractor has 90 days to complete the work. But it's a great program. I just wish more people would use it. And the only problem is in the past I've had inquiries, but unfortunately people did not have the equity to participate in the program, so they didn't qualify. And just to let you know, just to give you some numbers, I need new glasses. I have to take them off to see. But for the rebate program, since the program started in 1978, the city has issued 1,850 rebates. And as for the loan program, since 1978, we've funded 396 loans.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
Are there any questions? Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah. How many active properties do we have right now?
As far as, well, we have no loans and going on at this time, and that's because of staff shortage. When we lost our full-time building inspector in 2015, we weren't able to offer the loan to our residents because the building inspector is a very important part of this program, because he's the one that, well, the two of us go out and do the inspections, but he assists with the work write-up, and of course he monitors the work that the contractors are doing. So when we were contracting the services for the building inspector, that person, her hours were very limited, and so there was no time for her to help me with this program. And then we would have had to pay, I guess, additional money to have her available for that.
Okay, so that's one of the things we lost when we contracted that department, that position.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a wonderful program, and we need to ramp this up somehow. I'm not sure how we can promote this or get the word out, but.
Well, I think now that we have a full-time building inspector, we're going to be working on that and doing more outreach to the residents. As far as the rebate program, that has slowed down a bit as well. Right now, we probably have, I think, like 5 active rebates. And the thing about that is, in the past, we used to, many years ago, send out postcards to all the residents in the area. And I don't think that really worked because there's a lot of rental properties, and then people, you know, they just think it's junk mail, so it gets tossed. So I tried to change that as far as sending letters directly to the property owner with their names on it, using the property owner's address and not just mailing it to the residents. And I think that really helped because, especially when it has their name on it, I think they tend to read the information.
Okay, great, thanks.
Welcome. Okay, yes, Councilmember Fig.
Thanks so much for the report. As I recall, the rebate program was set up at the same time that the property maintenance ordinance was adopted initially. The idea was a stick and a carrot approach. Right. And I'm concerned that there's been a drop-off in the number of rebates because that then reflects on, well, how are we doing on the property maintenance enforcement side, because they kind of went hand in glove. And this may be a question for Mr. Stewart, that, you know, how well are these two programs operating in tandem? Because that was the theory behind the rebate program, was to you know, use the stick on the enforcement side, but then offer a handshake with the rebate. And it sounds to me that maybe there's some capacity here. Can you address that?
Sure. Right now, with regard to the property maintenance, we actually do, along with the letters that go out to the folks that have the complaints against them, we also provide them with information on the program again, so that they know that there is assistance from the city to help them bring their property up to what the city desires it to be. So that is something that's ongoing. As I mentioned earlier, Jennifer and I, as well as Mr. Chavin, our building official, are taking a look at the overall project itself, both of the programs. Based on the limited funds that we have, looking at ways to perhaps streamline it a little bit so that the folks that do apply are able to get more bang for the buck. You know, projects are becoming more and more expensive. And with our limited funds, we do have to look at certain items that should be allowed versus ones that wouldn't qualify. But we're still also looking at ways to further, as Jennifer mentioned, further advertise this so that we get the word out to the folks here in the community that these programs are available. We do have our building inspector here now, so we are able to utilize his services for these for the necessary inspections. So we are really excited about getting this up and running. Mr. Fig, you've mentioned in the past too about potentially using our in lieu fees that we have that are basically not being used right now. So that's another thing that we're working with finance on to put together a low and moderate income rehab program that would be funded through those fees, as well as potentially as well as with our set-aside funds to hopefully again entice and fund more programs here. So like I said, we were at a lull mainly because of staffing and whatnot, but because we do have the staffing available, again, we are interested in getting these programs up and running, both the rehab and the loan programs.
I'd be interested in seeing a follow-up report on your funding sources and what our capacity really is. And part of the funding has to do with the source. In the former days of RDA redevelopment, we had greater latitude in how the monies were spent, but with the block grant monies, we had other restrictions. If we're now relying on, depending on what the source is, we may be able to move away from what I would call, you know, kind of a control model, and that was what the original rehab program was, where the city did everything, did up the write-ups, did the bidding, oversaw the construction, and maybe it's time to move to more of a passive model, where the city makes the funding available like a lender, but not necessarily hands-on in terms of drawing up specs and doing the bidding and construction management and the like. But before those decisions are made, it would be helpful to know where the money's coming from, the sources, because that also dictates sometimes how a program is structured. So, and I'd also like to follow up on the code enforcement rebate connection, because there was a time the city was generating a lot of rebates because of a lot of code enforcement, and so they go hand in glove. And so I'd be interested in seeing those, the performance side of this whole program, of how are we doing on code enforcement that would generate customers for our rebate program. So I appreciate the update. These are great programs, and maybe it's time to retool them in some way in the structure of how they're delivered. But I think there's more information that needs to be made available. For instance, the outstanding portfolio of all the loans that the city has made, most of them are deferred loans. And that means that they're out there, and at some point in time when the property sells, those loans will come due. Well, that portfolio could be very sizable and maybe marketable to a secondary lender so that you generate more money now up front, usable cash. So that's the part that I'd like to suggest there be, and I have to direct that to Mr. Butler, a little bit more in-depth assessment of the financial wherewithal, so to speak, the sources, the amount that's available, and then we can talk further about any kind of program adjustments that may be appropriate.
Sounds like you're talking about factoring. Is that what that
Factoring?
process is?
I don't know what that is.
Where you sell off, like a manufacturer will sell off some of the assets in order to give cash to.
No, it's more of the secondary market where you sell a portfolio at a discount in order to get cash up front. And that's what we have. We have a sizable portfolio of loans that are out there, but they don't get paid back to the city until sale. And
yeah.
if we're,
I'm so sorry.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say that we do have currently, out of the 396 loans that we have funded, we have 17 outstanding rehab loans right now. Just so you know that.
There's only 17 loans in the portfolio?
That is correct.
That have not been repaid?
That is correct.
Okay. So it may not be that large. Nonetheless, that's a portfolio that could generate cash to continue to fuel the program. Anyway, those are the kinds of statistics that would be helpful to be able to understand what we can do.
Can I say one more thing as far as code enforcement and the rebate program? So there is a letter sent with, there's a summary of the program, the rebate program. That letter is sent with the letter that the code compliance officer is mailing out. And I do get calls from people who are interested because, the code compliance officer and we do communicate. The previous person would let me know, like, oh, I got a call from this person. They're interested in your program. They'll be calling you. Anyways, I just wanted to let you know that some of them do follow through and go through the rebate program. Some ask for an application and never submit it. So we try, but we can't force people, but we give them the information, and we just hope that they take advantage of the program, because it is a great program. If you have to do the work, you might as well get some money back for it.
Well, I think it would be interesting to get the statistics on number of code enforcement property maintenance related cases that have been generated over the last year versus the number of rebates, and compare that to what's happened in the past, because it seems to me that I'm going to leave it at that and look forward to getting the statistics before I make any judgments.
Okay, any other questions? Did you have questions? So I have a question, two actually. What's the average in terms of the rebate? Because you had mentioned it could be anywhere from 10 to 35%. So what would you say the average runs?
So with the 10 to 35%, I'll just explain it. So the 10% would be for high-income households, or those households who do not want to disclose their income information. So everybody qualifies for the minimum rebate, which is 10%, and then 20% would be for moderate income households, 30% would be for low-income households. And then for those households that the head of household is either elderly, a single parent, or disabled, they get an additional 5% bonus. But it just really varies. Probably, it's usually probably like around 20%. So a lot of people don't like to disclose their information, so they settle, you know, sometimes for just the minimum of 10%.
Okay. And then my other question was on the income specific, you know, if it ranks that way. And then on your, on the residential loan program, you talked about interior and exterior. Is there a minimum, maximum on that?
The minimum loan amount is $5,000. And then the maximum loan amount, it just depends because, again, they have to have equity in the property. But if for some reason, let's just say that their mortgage is paid off, it's still limited to 50% of the replacement cost of the home. And we get those figures from the ICC, International Code Council Building Valuation Data. So we use that to determine the replacement costs based on the square footage of the home.
So these two programs are really valuable for any of the homeowners within that area you talked about, right? The border area there.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, you know, encourage you to continue helping market the program so that we have then the homeowners knowing that there are these two great programs that they can, you know, exercise and get their homes either rehabbed or whatever else is needed in order to get them up to snuff. Yeah, perfect. Thank you for your report. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much. Moving on to item number 11, Deputy City Manager. So this is Miss Linda Lee.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and city manager, city attorney, and staff. Thank you for the item before you is the designations of voting delegations and alternates for the 2018 League of California City Annual Conference. This is a routine item before you on an annual basis from the League. This year, conference is scheduled from September 12th through the 14th in Long Beach. An important part of this annual conference is the annual business meeting, whereby the delegation, the city has a voting cast. In order to vote at the annual business meeting, each city council must designate a voting delegate. The item before you is for you to appoint a voting member and 2 alternates. Thank you.
Okay. So with that then, we need a voting member, voting delegate from this esteemed group of people. You think I should go? Sure.
I'd like to nominate our mayor.
Second.
Okay, and then do we need an alternate delegate in order to attend?
Yes, it is recommended.
I nominate Will Bird.
I'm sorry, I have to decline. I have other items on my agenda those 2 days.
So I would like to then nominate Councilmember Sharkey to be our alternate.
Yeah.
Second.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I may very well go.
Okay, all right. So with that, is that all we need? Do we need to vote on this at all, Mr. City Attorney?
I don't think you really have to vote unless there's a strong objection.
Is there any
then you can discuss
objection?
it.
Okay, all right.
So thank you. The item before tonight, staff will complete the registration form and will work directly with the delegate to do the conference registration.
Okay,
Thank
super.
you.
Thank you. And then we conclude with city manager report, a couple of other things on our agenda. So Mr. Rod Butler.
Yes, so I got on Saturday afternoon what every city manager dreads. I call it a FIG Saturday special. I got an email from council member. An FSS, it's called in the industry.
This was light.
Big Saturday.
So he had 6 items that he wanted quick updates on tonight. And actually, believe it or not, I think I can get through them pretty quickly. The first is kind of an update on the water rate study. Where are we with that? Where's the follow-up? It was April 16th, I think, the last time that item was on the council agenda. And we have been struggling a little bit with the consultant to get a revised scope of work. Basically, what's happening now is because of the Steve Hickok's retirement, the Raftelis, the consulting firm, is going to have to take a much larger role in the final steps of the process, which is bringing it back to council and then getting us through the 218 process. They were always going to be involved in that to some extent, but now with Steve gone, with that position vacant for the next few months, they're going to need to take a larger role. That has kind of stalled a little bit in terms of getting a response from them. So I will continue to work with Don and see if we can light a fire under that process, get a proposal back from them that works along with a timeline, and begin to move that process forward again. We're also going to be, and I'll be working with the city attorney to make sure that we do this in a Brown Act appropriate way. But we want to make sure that when we bring it back, we have the council's concerns addressed and dealt with. I know during that April 16th meeting, I was on my jury duty adventure that night, but I heard the reports about it, and it was obviously there was a disconnect between what the council was expecting and what the consultant brought back. So we want to make sure that we fix that, hopefully before we bring it back. So that's going to be an ongoing effort with them. And I don't, honestly, I don't have a date yet, a projected date in terms of when that will come back, but we know it's important and we won't let it ride too much longer. Number 2 on the list was a midterm budget report with an update on SPA matters, reserve funds. I was going to ask you, Councilmember Fig, you used the term corporate status. Does that, can you kind of
Madam
explain?
Mayor, may I speak to the city manager? That has to do with the very reason for its existence. Whether it needs to be retained versus being used as a piggy bank for the general fund.
I get it, okay. And then revenue projections for cannabis and current deficit forecasts. So our thought on that right now is that, you know, the council approved a 2-year budget, which runs all the way through, well, year 1 ends in just a couple weeks, June 30th. The 18-19 budget has been approved for the next fiscal year. So there isn't necessarily a need to act right now like we normally would be to approve another new budget. As Ken and I have talked, Ken and actually Linda and I, we're thinking that we will bring back to the council around the time we get the first solid preliminary numbers for the 17-18 fiscal year, which is usually September, mid to late September. Now, we won't have the full comprehensive annual financial report done by then. That's more like December, January. But we will have a pretty solid idea of how we did in 17-18 by that mid-September timeframe. So at that point, we would bring back a report with all of these things that Councilmember Fig requested, which is kind of how did we do in 17-18 fiscal year. We'll know more about where the reserve funds stand at that point, and we can have that SPA discussion. We know on revenue projections for cannabis, now that we have 2 of them open, we've been tracking the monthly payments. We know, for example, that we're not going to meet the projection that we made for 17-18 because we assumed there would be more businesses open by now. But we've already gone public with that, and we've scaled back the projected revenue for 17-18. I think we are closer to our target for 18-19 because we expect more businesses to be open during that fiscal year. So that's the thought on budget update, that one of your September meetings, probably the 2nd September meeting, we would be ready to go with that information. Item number 3 was tax measures for the November ballot. Put on your seatbelts for the July meetings, July 2nd, July 16th. we basically, it's not anything top secret. We know in order to get on the November ballot, there's a timeline that's driven by state law and by our Ventura County Clerk Recorder's Office, Clerk Recorder Registrar. So we are going to have to make some decisions at the next 2 meetings, probably July 2nd, to put it bluntly. So please let us know if any of you are not going to be around for either of those July meetings. That's important to us because of the importance of these issues that we'll be talking about. So let us know if anything comes up, if you got anything planned now, or if you have anything come up that's going to impact your ability to be there for the regular July meetings. Number 4, capital improvement programming for Hueneme Beach and Miranda Parks. I think I know what Councilmember Fig was referring to here, and that was the Don Villafana report from I think that same meeting, April 16th, where he presented some amenity ideas for the beach park, and then it kind of morphed into a Miranda Park discussion. Quick answer on that one is that he will be back July 16th, the July 16th council meeting, with his updated recommendations on that. That's the more immediate issue. There's also a longer term, bigger picture issue with both the beach park and Miranda Park in terms of master planning or longer term planning as far as major amenities changes that we would like to make in both of those, at both those locations, the beach park and the Miranda Park. And that will be coming down the road, not as soon as July 16th. But I would like to get us thinking longer term in terms of major improvements that we would like to make at those 2 facilities. So that's a second part of that project that's probably as much a Tony Stewart community development project as it is Public Works. Number 5, sand replenishment status and Channel Islands harbor management transition. I think I reported at least verbally recently that all systems are go for the for the every 2-year dredging cycle. There was a lot of concern about whether with the new administration the funding would be there. Apparently it is. It has been approved in the federal budget. Looks like December, January, this December, and then January 2019 is when that work will actually start happening. I know that there's some gearing up for it happening with the Army Corps of Engineers because Don and I were contacted recently about where they would like to do their equipment staging. So it's looking good. And I know even with that 2-year cycle, we have the long-term deficiency in the sand that we've gotten, but at least we appear to have dodged the bullet of not getting funding for the 2-year cycle. And then the harbor management transition, Deputy City Manager Linda Lee and I went and met with the interim harbor director, the replacement for Lynn Krieger, and I knew I would blank out on her name. Yeah, Susie Watkins. She mentioned that they are in a recruitment process for that position now with county HR. I don't know exactly where that process stands now in terms of has it closed, where are they with their selection. But I know one of the council members could have been either Councilmember Sharkey or Councilmember Fig had requested recently that we have a representative come and just give us an update on the harbor situation. And our thought was that, Harbor Department, our thought was we would wait until they name a permanent director, but if there's a desire to have a report sooner than that, we can have Susie Watkins come over and make that report for us. But right now, no permanent director has been named as of right now. And then the last item on the list was related to some existing litigation that the city has, and those are items that we will talk about and update the council on in closed session. That's not something that we would report out on in open session unless we were at a point of a settlement that the council voted on. So we'll follow up with the council as the need arises to update them on those matters. So I think that handled the Big Six.
Citizens Advisory Commission.
Oh, yes, okay.
Well, that was going to be my question.
Right. So good news on that as well. We received 15 applications after that kind of extended period. One of those was from a resident who is not actually a Port Hueneme resident. He has worked in the city for a long time and is starting a business here, but we had to deliver the news that the council had made clear, at least at this point in time, that you need to be a resident within the city limits. So that dropped us down to 14. And Linda Lee will be coming forward. Are you going to be ready on July 2nd? July 2nd with a status report on that whole process. The candidates have been informed of the fact that we've received and reviewed their applications. The council, I think at that now famous April 16th council meeting, requested to interview every single candidate. And we can still do that if that's the council's direction, but I think what Mrs. Lee is going to bring forward is a general update, but also asking the question, do you still want to stick with that original plan of interviewing all the candidates and doing it in a special council meeting venue, or do you want to rethink that? And she may have some recommendations on that. But yeah, it looks good. We have a good mix of probably about half and half beach area residents as opposed to residents of other areas of the city. And my own little pet peeve is that I think we should have some diversity in the area of residents in the city, so we don't have an all beach dominated group. But ultimately it's the council's call. So hopefully we're making progress on that slowly but surely, and Mrs. Lee will be back on July 2nd with the latest update, and we'll get the council's direction on it.
Okay, super. Thanks for your report. Any other questions for the city manager? Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
A couple things come to mind. If we're moving forward with a ballot measure, the county clerk recorder, from past experience, does not always keep to the same timetable as the state.
Yes, those screams that you heard from City Hall last week were our discovery that what we had originally thought, which is the state deadline, does not necessarily apply in Ventura County. Fortunately, we caught it early enough that we're going to be okay. But it is driving the decision to probably place it on July 2nd. As opposed to later in the month.
Right. I think we need to get moving on that. As far as the Channel Islands Harbor Director, originally Lynn Krieger had gone to Washington, D.C., and I thought it would be valuable to have her come back and report on what she found there. It would be good to hear from the new person as well. As we move forward, that's obviously a critical position since they're the lead agency on the dredging. The county has a lobbyist that works on this. We need to, I assume the new person coming in is going to be, is aware of this, but probably does not have the experience that Lynn Krieger had. As much as I like to criticize her at times, she does know her stuff. And also, for those who haven't known, I got an email from the city manager. I don't know if everybody else got the same thing, but the Coastal Commission shafted us again on the harbor dredging sand. A gentleman from Surfrider got up and said he didn't want to put directly on the beach, so they decided to put it offshore, and which is an experiment that was tried a few years ago and didn't work at all. It'll wind up somewhere down the coast. It won't help us a bit. So it's really too bad to lose that, because that, although it was, I think, 700,000 cubic yards, would go towards helping us catch up. And we're not going to we'll get some benefit, but not what we should have gotten. So that's the follow-up on that.
Okay. With that, then we move on to item number 13, council member reports, comments, requests for future agenda items. I'll start at that end. Nothing? Councilmember Sharkey, Councilmember Fig, Mayor Pro Tem Byrd.
No,
Nothing?
I was just going to request the addition to the upcoming agenda for our concerns, considerations, recommendations for the Community Advisory Board. I think it really has to be looked at closely.
I attended the VCOG annual dinner last Thursday, Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and we changed it up a bit. We usually have a guest speaker that talks about, you know, issues of importance. So Hugh Riley actually had two graduating high school seniors, one graduating high school senior, one person, or one adult who has now graduated from high school and attended his first year at San Francisco State, and talking about what was of importance to them. Really very interesting. You know, here are two young folks who, you know, are determined to get certain degrees, but they do want to come back here, and they do want efforts from different cities, whether it is for first-time buyers program for houses once they get their degrees and start their careers, to then actually having a vibrant community that has benefits for those that are not married and don't have kids, you know, versus maybe the suburban centers of some of our communities that really do strive to build homes and have other amenities for families. It really is looking inward and saying, what can we have for then these that don't have what the suburbs call to them, but maybe more of a urban kind of focus, with different cities looking at it. I mean, you know, maybe it's from the Moore Parks in Thousand Oaks to Port Hueneme and Oxnard, so it's really kind of an interesting discussion. And then last but not least, I will be delivering the State of the City tomorrow at the Chamber Breakfast, bright and early at 7 o'clock, so please don't miss it. It's going to be interesting. All right. With that, then, we move on to continuation of open forum. So here's where we allocate a few other minutes for folks that want to talk about something not on the agenda. So seeing none, then, we will adjourn to the regular meeting scheduled on July 2nd here at City Hall. Thank you.